Welcome to the Digital Roundtable. It is a glorious day, February 3rd, 2021, and we are having a jam-packed session to be. The topics are phenomenal, and our guest speaker is another superstar. I'm going to ask our favorite John Sibley Butler to pick up the guitar and get the mood rolling as the rolling hills of Central Texas take us to a new day.
Let's go to Lukenbach, Texas, Billy and Whalen and the boys. This successful life we're living got us feeling like the Hatfields and McCoys. Between Hank Williams' train song, Jerry Jeff train song, and Blue Eyes crying in the rain. Back in Lukenbach, Texas, ain't nobody feeling no pain.
Excellent, Johnny. Always a great inspiration. Get me in the mood. John Sibley Butler, how are you doing today, doctor?
I am doing just fine. It's a great day in Austin, Texas. It looks like the economy is trying to open back up. There are lots of interesting things going on. I'm looking at our relationship with China. I'm looking at oil and gas. I'm looking at what would be the relationship between the great oil that we know in the great state of Texas and all of the new kinds of energy. It's a great time to study, and it's a great time to observe.
Fantastic. And obviously, there is our one and only Llewelyn King. How are you today?
I'm very well. I'm not hearing you very well. I have a weak connection for some reason. But I'm great. Like everybody else, I'm a bit tired of hermiting. I find that I'm a remarkably gregarious person, and I would like to get back to it. I was just talking to an old newspaper friend of mine about people and places, and we both realized that we haven't met anyone in a year. That is a very long time to go through your life without meeting anyone, and it begins to mount as a pressure, as an anxiety factor.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'm better off than most, and no reason to complain. People who don't have work, people who really don't have anything, are in terrible circumstance, and mine are quite remarkably good, so I should not complain.
I think I am glad that you. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I was so delighted to hear that you want to talk about energy storage, because that is the big play in my view, and it's an uncharted world.
We will.
Some ideas, but we don't know.
We will. Before we get there, though, let me say hello to Tim Fairchild real quick. Tim, how are you today? Thanks for coming.
I'm doing great. It's a great day here in Cary, North Carolina. I wish we were all together. This is the next best thing to it. And I just think back to being together with you guys 2 years ago. I already knew you, Andres, but to meet John and Llewelyn in the same day was just extraordinary. And I'm so happy to be here with you three. You know what I compared it to, like playing the Masters with three legends. So
appreciate you. You're very kind. You're
totally dishonest, but we're glad of it.
Let me introduce you formally for the audience. So Tim Fairchild is the Director of Global Energy and Manufacturing Industry Practice at SAS, one of the most successful analytics pioneers of machine learning and AI companies for a long time. He's joining us in today for a full hour, and we will get his insights. Tim was, before SAS, a supply chain executive at IBM and Compaq, and he started his career at Ready Fusion Simulation, where he held multiple roles and kind of walk the ropes of the whole company: manufacturing, production control, supply chain, and risk management. And again, SAS is the world's largest independent business analytics company with consistent revenue growth and profitability since it was founded in 1976. And SAS provides an integrated set of software products and services to more than 45,000 customer sites in over 100 countries. And last but not least, Tim. Tim holds undergraduate degrees from Haslam College of Business at the University of Tennessee. I don't hear Butler saying anything. And Young Harris College.
But I'll just say this, and then we can move on. In 2000, Tennessee was ranked number 2 in the country, and LSU beat them. And I don't know how they did. And it's been downhill ever since. I don't understand.
John, thank you for that. Okay. Thank you.
We are highly
I forgot one thing to say. Go Tigers. I'm sorry.
We have to end up talking football all the time, unfortunately, Tim. Not that I want to, because I'm a Jayhawk. I'd rather talk basketball lately either. But let me get to the news real quick on where we are and get you guys' take on things. So COVID-19 seems to be rampant. The trends are up and up and up, and it's looking worse and worse, and it's not a good thing. So I've actually, over the last 3 months, a lot of people that I know have gotten it. So it's kind of disturbing. So I'm wondering real quick, you work at SAS and you guys are a global company, what is going to you guys' livelihood, work style? What's changing? Anything good coming out of it other than everybody telecommuting?
Well, I work for an absolutely extraordinary company, founded by an extraordinary man. And back in May, Dr. Goodnight did an interview, and in his normal blunt style, he said that we aren't going to lay anybody off, right? This was back in May. Things were bleak in May and getting bleaker, kind of like today. And typical Goodnight statement, and I'm just going to read it to you because I don't want to miss any of the nuance. He said, this would be a terrible time to lay people off. It would just be horrible because you can't go find another job. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And if you're the CEO of a private company and you don't have investors and shareholders and analysts beating you up, you can do the right thing. And Dr. Goodnight did this back in May. And, we are all fully employed. And I count my blessings every day. Now, at the same time, it's been fascinating at SAS because of what we've been able to do to help our customers all over the world in all different industries. And, things like we've made our best stuff available for free to help solve COVID problems. And I've been at SAS 18 years and I've always been proud to work here, but never prouder than last year, how we were treated by the company and how my company treated its customers. So if there's any silver lining in this, it's things like that, Andres.
Yeah, no, thanks for your feedback. And yeah, I concur with you that you guys are in a unique position to do the right thing. John, what's your take on COVID and what's going on at the university?
Well, I think it's interesting, given Tim's comments about the relationship between the company you work for and looking into the future and taking care of them. And maybe, Tim, this is why lots of companies are going back to be private so that they don't have to put up with the Wall Street beating up on them, and et cetera. What I see now, again, is the vaccines are coming, and I've had my shot. And what we're looking for is the whole idea, what would the impact be? Will it be a lag impact? And I think that's what people are doing. They're looking more to the future, whether it is enterprises and whether it's trying to determine whether or not we would go back to the office or will we stay virtually. These are all business decisions that will change the business models that we have. So from my perspective, and quite frankly, my research efforts to write grants, I want to know the impact of this on the future and the future business models. What will we look like in the future? I think jobs will be created. I think the signals for roadside pickup will go up. You're looking at how important SAS is becoming in our ability to take data and write equations about where we should be in the future. And included in that is all of the elements of human activity. And then, of course, that combines with the Internet of Things to give us a world that would be very, very different, maybe at least 20% than the world that we just left prior to the pandemic. So my observations have turned to what is the impact? What will be the signal of the pandemic on the business side? What will schools do? Is it necessary now for me to go to my other alma mater, Northwestern University, and attend there, or can I attend virtually at least half of the time, and the other half go meet the people that my tuition pays for me to go meet?
Yeah.
So Andres, it's real interesting times in America. I have seen, in terms of me being locked in, it reminds me, ironically, I'm a Vietnam veteran, and it reminds me of being away from the world for a year. Because when you come back from war, you have to recreate all of your relationships. It's a great time to be alive. It's a bad time to be alive, and it's a different time to be alive.
Thank you, John. Llewelyn, what are your thoughts this week on what's going on and how are we moving forward?
Great, interesting time, I agree. We had the great 19th century novel, How We Live Now. I want to know how we're going to live. When we vanquished the pandemic, how are we going to live? It will be differently. How different, we don't know, but it will be, as John said, very like post-war. Post-war is always different from pre-war, and this will be a post-war world. I think we're going to hear a great deal about every kind of technology, but most especially in the short term, social media, the effects of the GameStop, the run-up on the stock market, the wisdom or the idiocy of crowds. We're going to hear about that. I made a television program about it yesterday. I'm utterly fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by how we will adjust to social media without damaging our right to speak, our right to free action, including our right to lose our paycheck gambling if we wish to do that in the market.
Absolutely.
Every time you introduce a corrective whatever rule, regulation, you also tend to subtract something. And some of these problems, in fixing them, the subtraction may exceed in its evil the evil that we set out to remedy. It's a very interesting time. I believe myself that there are often third ways of dealing with a problem. Rather than one of these has to make it, there is a third way to cause these to come like that. When it comes to social media, some sort of third way of redress. I think maybe beefed up libel, a need for people to identify themselves. It's going to take a while. It's an intellectual challenge. It's not a technical challenge. It is finding a solution that doesn't inhibit our rights in any way at all. Personally, I was no fan of Trump, but I'm not sure that any private company should have shut him down, as it were. He's right to use a common carrier to express his opinion. I think we should designate the media companies as common carriers, not as publishers. And I think that they should have responsibilities to carry. If what they carry is very offensive, there should be a court that can rule on that separately. The third way, the third break, the third situation that will remedy what has gone wrong without taking away any of our inherent and enjoyable rights.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let me recap real quick, and I'm going to go back to Tim to get his take on all this, because you just opened up the next segment of our focus here, which is usually the stock market. And the stock market has had a unique set of days, couple of weeks actually. And what's happening, in my opinion, again, is digitalization through social media is changing, forming how we do things. And now is into the stock market. And what the Robinhood guys in Reddit and others are being part of is the beginning of a new trend where experts in social media are helping their stock group friends and followers to basically say, hey, you know, I like this company. This company seems to have good stock portfolio, a good balance sheet, and, you know, we should all buy it. And there is nothing illegal about that. But here's the interesting consequences of what has happened, right? So American Airlines, the CFO of American Airlines should get the prize for the smartest guy in the world, because the moment he saw when this was going on with the American Airlines stock, they issue more shares and pay debts. The AMC CFO should be number 2 on that list, because in the stock run-up, they sold all their stock and pay all their debt. And so those 2 companies were the virtue of being bankrupt, and now they're solvent because of that. And there's nothing illegal about what happened. It's just kind of fascinating. So Tim, clearly this is all driven by the next generation of not only social media, but really AI and ML and the intelligence of computers. What are your thoughts on what we're seeing with COVID accelerating and pushing digital transformation in many ways? And this is another example of it.
Yeah, Andres, I think it's you know, as you said, it's an accelerator. In some cases, it's this is kind of a bad pun, but it's going to be an incubator, because new things will come out of this. New, you know, not viruses, right? But new things, new ways of doing business, new ways of doing things. I am a long-time supply chain guy, and I came to SAS in 2002 to work on supply chain. And it's fascinating to me, as someone who was part of a, you know, kind of a low priority sector. Not a lot of people thought about supply chains. Things just happened, right? Stuff got made, stuff showed up on the shelf, and the whole world discovered the importance of supply chains and just how fragile that they've become over the last 10 or 15 years, while we haven't been looking. As you know, these long, thin, just-in-time supply chains, they are things of beauty if you're a supply chain person. But when you run out of toilet paper and paper towels and everything you can think of, you know, it's much better now, but I would go, you know, I'd go shopping, and it would be remarkable to try to figure out the pattern of what wasn't on the shelf. And you might need to be a sociologist or you know, a bright journalist or big thinker like Llewelyn to figure out why yeast was hard to find for a while. So I'm delighted to see people focused on supply chains. It's something that I'm, you know, it's kind of near and dear to my heart. It's a side industry to me, to energy. But that's one of the things I'm really excited about, is back in the spotlight with an opportunity to make global supply chains a lot more flexible, a lot more not risk-proof, because you can never totally de-risk, but more risk-sensitive and more capable of being adaptive and flexible.
So John, help us connect the dots, because for a lot of people, these are all unintended consequences, non-related events. What's happening, John? What is digitalization doing? What's going on?
Well, what's happening with the stock market first is the wisdom of the crowd. So for those of us who like to buy stock, we like to go to the experts, and we usually attach it to an index. And so we literally buy the index and we attach it to an index. All of a sudden, someone would say, hey, why should I deal with just the S&P 500? What are these indexes about? Let's go beneath, much like supply chain, let's go beneath the surface and pick our own stock. So what has happened then is that, well, but would the expert do that? Oh, not at all. We're not going to do this short stuff. So what's happening then is that the technology, not just the technology, the savvy, not necessarily the smartness, but the savvy of generations are finding that they could always beat the system. And when you look at innovation, when you look at change, when you look at what's happening in the stock market, all of the run-ups, and remember, they are buying stocks not on the basis of traditional kind of measures. They're buying it on the basis of what they're saying in the chat sessions. So they go to the chat sessions and they're chatting about a stock. I'm going to buy this. What about price to earning? Where did that ratio go? So what you see here is the wisdom of the crowd being applied to the stock market. But I think that now that the stock market has that kind of information, I met with my broker, then it will adjust to that. Now, when you combine all of this to supply chains and what's going on in the world and where things are coming from, they definitely are all connected. And the most important connection going forward in the future will be our relationship with supply chains and software and 5G and 6G and China. So our unstructured problem now is we've got the stock market being very, very interested, right? We have some conflicts, I wouldn't say an outward conflict, but certainly underlying conflict with China over technology, knowledge and know-how, who will control the software industry, who will control 5G. These things are real. So Andres, where we are, we're back to the automobile and the horses and the buggies. We're back to computers and typewriters. This will be one of the most interesting things for the Internet of Things and the Internet of People, and how we create the signal and the noise for the future. And for me, of course, that's writing equations with all of the great data that we have. So remember that our type of economy is not one that's in constant equilibrium. It is an economy that's in structural change at all times. And when we can benefit from the structural change, then those companies will be the winners of the future.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I would like to seize on the wisdom of crowds. Crowds and the whole concept of wisdom of crowds is if a crowd comes to a position individually, unaffected by each other, that may be wisdom. When they get together in a herd, it is the reverse of wisdom, which is what we saw on January 7th, which is what we've seen in GameStop. When you get a gang of one opinion influencing each other without any independent opinion, then you don't get it. We are going to see a new world, and we are periodically taken over by mythology. And I must suggest that part of the supply chain, and please, Tim, correct me, the supply chain thinness was introduced by the idea of just in time. No need to have inventories, no need to have storehouses. Just in time is more efficient, except we paid a price for it. and we probably could pay a price in the will be vastly changed in the future by technology. It will affect the way we live. New companies will appear, new technologies not yet conceived will affect our lives. You can't think the future. You have to wait for it. But what you're doing today will affect it. And these things sound contradictory.
Absolutely.
They're not actually
Absolutely.
contradictory.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think
Tim,
that we will be in a golden age.
I was going to switch to Tim real quick, Llewelyn. Tim, real quick, tell us a little bit about what's happening in the world through your eyes in charge of energy and manufacturing. Where is AI taking us? Where is machine learning taking us?
Right, Andres. So I've had energy and manufacturing together for about a year. And it's funny because 5 years ago, I was a person that didn't see any connection between those two industries. I thought, okay, there's energy and then there's manufacturing. And what's occurred to me, and you know, after you form your construct, you wonder how long, you know, I don't know why it took me so long to form that construct, but these are two of the most fundamental, important industries. And if you want to be focused on carbon, which the world is going to want to do again, as soon as we all get vaccinated, which is going to be soon, the world is going to turn its attention back to carbon. And it's not going to be enough just to beat up the power sector, right? That's about a third of the carbon. You got to go after transportation. You got to look at manufacturing and industrial processes. You need to look at ag tech. And this is going to be a really exciting time to be in a business like SAS is in, where there's already an enormous amount of data, and it's, you know, each day it increases. And, you know, when we start, I'm not sure how long it's going to be until we fully use 5G capabilities, but with the cost of sensors coming down and down and down, there'll be so many opportunities across all industry sectors that are going to be focused on carbon, to use that data and use all types of analytic methods, including AI, including forecasting, including, you know, things that don't get a lot of PR. I mean, I really would like to figure out how to be a press agent for time series forecasting or regression, because they've kind of got swallowed up with a lot of hype around AI, things like that. So I'll probably get this wrong, and my SAS friends will really poke me, but there's something, it's called GARCH. It's generalized autoregressive heteroscedasticity. And we don't have, you know, programs and collateral extolling the virtues of GARCH. So that may be my plan for this year, is to go on a mission to promote GARCH.
Tim, you know that a regression equation was a learning equation. And, you know, when we started, when I first talked to a computer at Northwestern University, we told that computer what to do, okay? And then we looked at the multicollinearity. We looked at things that were related and not related. So I think what has changed is our ability to process so fast. But basically, the question that we've got to ask is this: is the normal curve still relevant? My latest article, I scraped from LinkedIn all of the data. I could have had 5 million cases. Why should I estimate parameters? Right. So you are exactly right. And Llewelyn would tell you that in all of this data, there's a lot of noise. So data scientists, if you look at a great book by Choi, C-H-O-W, called Precision, which I assigned to Andre.
I know that book. I know him.
Yeah, well, he was on the forefront of looking at across industries and what a company like SAS should be doing, or at least thinking about. So as we move forward with all of this data, and I love Llewelyn's take on this, garbage in garbage out. We have to be able to write the equations, but we're not writing the equations now. AI, artificial intelligence, is writing the equation. I'm not determining what the independent variable is or the multicollinearity between the independent variables, that is, whether or not they're the same or not. I'm not determining the homoscedasticity of all of that. AI is now doing that. Just as sure as AI is flying the plane, will make cars peopleless, then in your business, they will also write the equation. So computers now, because remember now, sensors are not people. We can let off and think about so many ideas, but all of these things that we're talking about, whether it's smart cities, they are producing so much information per second. So there are machines and there are human beings, and they are outdoing us when it comes to the production of data.
And it's all, and John, it's all about decisions, isn't it? It's not about an algorithm or data. It's a decision, it's an outcome. And there are some that you want machines to make.
Right.
And I think I hope as long as I live, there will be decisions that humans will still make.
Well, good luck with that, because with Markov chains, which there's an analysis called Markov chains, which maximizes the sum of the squares and knows when to split 5 days before I can even think about splitting. So our question is, how do we interact with and make decisions about what machines can do? You're exactly right.
So let me pause here real quick. I'll take my moment to give thanks to our sponsor and promote the Digital 360 Summit. We are shooting for May 18th, 19th, and 20th at the Embassy Suites in San Marcos. This is in joint partnership with Texas State University and CIEDAR, the Consortium for Connected Infrastructure. This year, we're looking at 100 speakers, 400 companies, 2 awards. We have a Digital 360 Summit Hall of Fame inductee, and we will have a Digital 360 Summit Entrepreneur of the Year. We're looking at 1 showcase, over 1,000 attendees, 20 keynotes, 14 panels, followed by our traditional 14 white papers and 20 videos. And so excited that we're going to go back to face-to-face. We will obviously have all the COVID elements taken care of for that. These are the speakers that spoke in August, our most recent conference. And I want to thank again Texas State University for sponsoring the Digital-Roundtable. So let me come back real quick and reset our conversation a little bit around energy again. So real quick, some of the quick highlights and get your take on. So there was a big conference that happened 2 weeks ago. It was virtual, and a bunch of former FERC chairs, Pat Wood, and many others got together. And they all said that there would be no significant energy transformation until the federal transmission overhaul system is integrated into that transformation, because intra-commerce, intra-transmission challenges, bringing, let's say, renewable energy from Nevada to New York and so on and so on, it could be a game changer, but there's all kinds of legal regulatory challenges that need to be addressed. So this panacea, we're going to overnight go into a green economy and it's not going to cost us a dime and it's going to take 30 seconds, is a real panacea. It's never going to happen. So there's some serious things that need to be dealt with. Another interesting element of what's going on is Elon Musk went on record to talk down hydrogen and say that batteries from Tesla will do everything and solve the problems that hydrogen is trying to solve. And then another interesting element of things coming together for those in the industry, the Southwest Power Pool began operations running the Western Imbalance Market which is made out of things like the Basin Electric Power Cooperative, Deseret Power Electric Cooperative, the Municipal Energy Agency of Nebraska, Tri-State Generation, and the Western Area Power Administration, and the Wyoming Municipal Power Agency. And what that is telling you is that energy markets are inefficient. And in the West Hemisphere, in the Western side of the US, all the way sort of from, Kansas west, if you a straight line to Dakotas, Kansas, to the Texas west, there is that part of the market is highly imbalanced. And so now there is a big effort to trying to unite all that grid, so that what's going to happen is more renewable energy, more electric vehicles, more energy storage, but hopefully the prices will come down, electricity will get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So none of this can be done though without tools like SAS. So Tim, what is your take on, this fury of transformation? I know that we worry about COVID impacting 20, 40 million people that work in the service industry that don't have jobs, but the world's not waiting, and the world's moving very fast. What's your take on what's going on, and how your technology and your company helps make this real?
Yeah, Andres, just to pick up on your comments about, what's going on with, moving energy from one coast to the other. I just have a lot of friends that don't really care about energy because they're 99% of the world. It's always just worked for them, and they flip a switch and it comes on. But the topic of energy now is always in the news. It's front page, and it's solar, and it's wind, and it's batteries. And I like to talk to people about data, right? Not emotions, not feelings, not politics, but data and math and science. And I say, well, here in Raleigh, or this area, a couple of years ago, we had 11 straight days of cloud cover. And I said, if you wanted to be 100% green, you could do it tomorrow here in Cary, North Carolina. And that would be good on a lot of days when it's bright and sunny, or the wind's blowing, or the wind's blowing in, somewhere on the West Coast, and we have enough transmission lines to get it here. But I tell them, I said, there's not enough. Well, there is enough money in the world, but it would take an enormous, a prohibitive amount of money to buy enough batteries to have gotten us through 11 straight days of cloud cover. And what I get really excited about is thinking about things in terms of data, math, economics, which is, that was my least favorite class in college. Probably, if that's all we did is looked at energy policy in terms of economics, we'd be a lot better off right now. So I think the good thing is that there are people interested in energy who've never been interested in it before. And what I hope is that they can be informed by data and math and science and engineering. And I've told them, hey, if you really want to understand solar, go look up what inertia means. And then it'll take 5 minutes of study. And you don't have to be an engineer to understand this. Go spend 5 minutes. There's a great little video that explains it in 5 minutes. Watch that, understand inertia, and then let's talk about solar and wind and storage and lights being on when it's 5 degrees at 7 o'clock in the morning on a cold winter day here in North Carolina.
Yeah, Llewelyn?
Well, I think it's a good idea to think about energy. I hesitate to making it a public issue. I went through the energy crisis. I founded the Energy Daily in 1973, and the more the public got into it, the more confused and wrong it all became. There were conspiracy theories. There were tankers off New York. I mean, it never stopped. There was a petroleum pill which the companies were keeping off the market, which could be put into water and used. Then there was an almost credible man who was going to grind coal so fine that you could burn it like it was oil. I mean, there was no end. The one I liked the best was a lunatic who came to see me, and he had the solution. He was going to explode hydrogen bombs under the North Atlantic, catch the energy in an enormous umbrella, and share it between Europe and America. He was pretty insistent that he was on to something. I think he was on something. The fact is that we are seeing two different things. We're seeing the desire for better integration between utilities, and we're seeing the microgrids, which are really a move in the other direction. So you're going to have some compatibility between those two. The big issue is storage. Maybe a lot of people, the Europeans, and certainly out in Arizona, they're hoping that hydrogen will be the best storage medium, because you could, in theory, store enough hydrogen to cover an 11-day shortage of sunshine or a 9-day shortage of wind, which happened in Texas 2 years ago. Storage is the game. I don't know that we've seen all the options in storage yet. They're talking about using pumped storage in abandoned mine shafts. They're talking about running trains up mountains and have them come down slowly, generating electricity, a physical storage as opposed to a battery storage. What does seem certain is that batteries don't have the drawdown life to do the job. There is no battery that will last 24 hours, let alone 11 days, as you cited, Tim. I think maybe the creation of a new fuel in hydrogen, which is de facto a new fuel, but it's not perfect. It has a lower energy density, quite substantially lower. It is a very small molecule. It's a lot harder to handle, and it burns very hot. It's not going to be a substitute for natural gas. It may be a supplement to natural gas, but a very useful way of storing some energy. And it has the possibility that you can save nuclear power, oddly, with hydrogen, because those steady state plants, if you go back to Arizona where you have Palo Verde, 4,000 megawatts, it needs to run flat out. It's a nuclear power plant. It doesn't follow load. Right. And it's pretty useless when the load is doing this, and it can't do anything about it. The solar electricity is cheaper than the nuclear electricity. So the market says, buy the solar when it's available. What do you do with the nuclear? Well, if you use the nuclear to make hydrogen, your storage conduit, you have a solution. But at this point, this is largely on paper. It hasn't actually been done. The Europeans are further ahead towards doing it with electrolysis of water. You might even get into a question of water supply in Arizona, but mostly it's in coastal areas we think of doing it, and those technologies will improve. The technology of electrolysis will improve. Maybe the technology of reforming natural gas with steam will improve. But it's the beginning of an exciting, interesting, and critically important journey if we're going to continue to use solar and wind as our primary new generation.
I agree 300%. Say, Llewelyn, you are right on the money on that. And I would
where
bet,
do I pick up the money?
I would bet between the four of us and the audience that the French are going to be the French. C'est la vie, that will come up with the answer, because 80% of their energy infrastructure is nuclear.
Hey, Bob, look, here's the deal.
The people who, just as a matter of fact, are farthest ahead are the Dutch, but they have such a passion for. Also, for some historic reason, they have a gas distribution system using piping and connections and pumps that will handle hydrogen better than many.
Sure.
It is unlikely that what we have installed, and there are many thousands of miles of piping carrying natural gas, will be ideal to carry it. And you can't afford leakage because it's so inflammable.
Well, the fact of
Johnny?
the situation is, with all of these great technologies in America, our grid edge is still 1924 technology. Despite of the fact that we have all of this great technology, the question is, how do we make the grid smart? How do we make it so that different kinds of energy can get back onto it? And it's a problem of a public-private, not public in the sense of all the people, but a public-private partnership between government and industry. And as Tim said, as long as I can turn on my switch and my lights come on, I am absolutely fine. So I think we have done so much research on grid technology. Andreas have written all of the books. We have technology sitting on the shelf, but it's not a Schumpeter problem. It's not the fact that SAS could disrupt SPSS and take over the market. It's not the fact that Tesla could disrupt General Motors and take over the market. We cannot disrupt, in that traditional sense with technology, the grid system because it is a public-private kind of relationship. So until we get policy, look, if this were a situation where I could just say, here's the new grid, jump on my grid. The problem is we cannot do that. But I can tell you this, since I'm working on the grid thing, the technology is there to solve the integration problem with solar and wind and et cetera. But I can tell you this, you cannot run America on clean energy solely, all right? You cannot do that. So America has a problem. Texas is okay. America has a problem with. So what I'm saying is that, look, Andre, we have to figure out a way to take all the technologies that's sitting on the shelf. But hey, if I'm an electric, if I'm a grid company and I'm making money head over fist on the 1912 technology, why should I switch? What's the incentive to make me switch? My customers won't leave me. Schumpeter would say entrepreneurs move the resources from old technologies to new technologies, but we cannot do that with energy. So we can have the storage figured out. We can have Tesla, the great scientist, figured out. And the big question is, how do we get utilities to switch the technologies when it's so good for them on an economic basis? So why should I switch? I'm making money head over foot. So why should I switch? That is the unstructured problem, I think.
John, I think what they need is innovation and creativity. If only there existed the Institute for Innovation and Creativity. If only such a thing existed, right?
Well, you know, I read it.
It's called CMG.
And then if you apply curiosity to that,
yes,
it's so fascinating to think about the technology. And, you know, I work for a company that has a very big R&D group. Dr. Goodnight puts back 25% of sales into R&D. And there are two parts, that's two words, research and development. And when we want to fix storage, we can either scale up the stuff we've already got. That's pretty good. That's gonna help right now. But we need to put a lot of money into research to figure out what is the next thing. Is it hydrogen? With all due respect to Elon Musk, hydrogen may be the thing. So it's an exciting time. And to me, these are the things that ought to make high school students, college students think about coming into this industry. I didn't think about it in 1979 when I graduated. I wish I could go back to the 17-year-old Tim Fairchild and say, go into the utility industry because it's going to not only get really exciting, but it really is the most important of all the industry sectors. I didn't see it coming.
Electric cars, we're going to need all kinds of storage for information. It's going to be an interesting time to be in America. Our grid, in my opinion, cannot handle the EV revolution that's coming.
Yes, I agree with that. Llewelyn, you had a question?
Yeah, I wonder whether the problem of the utility industry adopting new technology or revising the way it does business isn't associated with the fact that it is non-competitive, that it operates in so-called natural monopolies, and no utility executive wakes up in the morning thinking, what is company B going to do to grab my market share? They may worry about cybersecurity. They may worry about the integrity of their long distance lines. They may worry about wildfires. They may worry about a huge set of problems. What are they going to do during the pandemic where they cannot shut off people and they're losing money, which they may never get back? They're down about 5.5% on their revenues, but they're not thinking, oh, Uber is coming, or Lyft is coming, or SAS is coming. They don't have that kind of competition. It is sealed off in these natural monopolies. And deregulation, which I have to do with, it didn't work. It didn't create natural markets. It created some small market effect at the retail level, but it wasn't the case of a big new company. Now, some other companies are now interested in the utility space. Whether there's room for them, I do not know. But companies like Google and others looking at smart cities are looking at the utility space and seeing both opportunity and vulnerability.
Absolutely. So what
something usually happens when you get those two together.
Google could
I would say real quick, John, I would say, Llewelyn, that the door has been opened. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission created 2 laws in the 3 years, one called Order 841, and then Order 2222. And those orders allow third-party aggregators to become the agents of distributed energy resources anywhere in the grid, to be a player, an equal player at the wholesale level. So the monopoly is done and the door has been opened.
What happened though?
The game hasn't started yet because it has not been instituted by any of the 10 grid operators, but the 10 grid operators are required to let the doors open. And at some point you may have Google, Amazon, AT&T, Verizon, Charles Schwab, JP Morgan, Bank of America, and many others being companies that are selling energy.
Absolutely, because they have the customer base. And it would go like this, Llewelyn. They would purchase electricity wholesale and sell it to their customers retail. So if you are a Google person, right, or if you're an Apple person, or if you're a whatever person, and they have millions and millions of customers already, what a great business model for them. So they purchase the electricity, and then the competition begins on what you pay for electricity and also how you produce the electricity. So I can envision then saying, look, we need to be innovative in a sense. We need to take the Andre Carvallo, make the whole thing smart so we know where every bit of electricity is. And then as we do that, we can create a price point for electricity. And furthermore, with all the controls, we don't have to have it where it's manually done. If electricity demand is high, it costs more. If the demand is less, then it automatically costs less. So I think the door has been opened. I think I spoke about that at the last digital meeting that we had, Andreas.
Your choke point remains the wires. You can have all of these really fancy marketing schemes, which is what they are, but the wires, you're not going to replicate the wire system that is the grid. Wires that have been built
Correct.
over many decades, and while you
Correct.
have unimaginative companies controlling the wires, you're going to get unimaginative results. You need, first of all, to think of a new way of competition, not just sharing around the customers there are, and go from there. And I don't think that we have FERC is capable of bringing it about. I think some company doing something equivalent to what MCI did to the telephone company will bring it about. And then you can really unleash new technology.
I agree, but Nikola
deregulation.
Nikola Tesla said we're going to have wireless electricity.
Yeah, so Llewelyn, deregulation was happening nationwide in 1998, and then a little company called Enron created a few problems, and deregulation was shut down. However, Texas carried forward that deregulation, driven by a gentleman called Pat Wood, former FERC chairman in Texas PUC.
I knew Pat well.
Pat Wood III. Pat Wood III. And he drove deregulation in Texas, and he was FERC chairman when deregulation was happening nationwide. And the model exists. It's present in Texas. It's a winner model. We have the best power, the best prices. Just copy it.
Great point about you made about wires, Llewelyn, and what struck me is that the wires of tomorrow don't look like the wires of today. What makes me say that is I read about 2 years ago that the charger for Tesla's commercial truck would be the equivalent of, it depends what country you live in, either 500, 800, 1,000, or 2,000 houses, all in a very small little space. And what does the grid look like? What do the wires look like tomorrow if we are going to have long distance trucks that need to be charged quickly by infrastructure like that? It's fascinating. And if you love things like forecasting and spatial forecasting and scenarios and engineering and math and physics, it's a really, really good math problem.
Tim, supposing you have a corporation created to charge these trucks, which builds its own generation, has wires to its sites and nowhere else. You change the dynamics of the electricity in this country. I think that is the direction it'll go in. I think the grid, rather than being a better grid for the future, it may be less grid for the future, broken into more manageable, rational, local entities, but that requires storage. You can't contemplate breaking up the grid till you get storage, because you need now to ship electricity to wheel it large distances to compensate for local conditions. Get rid of that, and you really don't need all those wires that have been the tradition. It's sort of saying that it's like aircraft. You didn't need all those rails.
I think that we have reached the end of this conversation today for time, but there's not enough wires or batteries or everything for what's coming. As we move from 1 billion things connected to 100 billion things connected, the amount of information and energy on the data centers and the cars and everything, the need for more generation is going to go 10x. We are going to build, like you wouldn't believe, more generation to electrify everything. We're witnessing the electrification of the rest of the industries. And for that to happen, we're going to have to go from 11 gigawatts of production capacity today to 100 of production capacity.
Great. It's going to be very interesting to move forward. Yes.
Absolutely.
So we have it here. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree, Johnny. And clearly to, regulatory stuff is a key issue that you mentioned. But I tell you, it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be alive, to be in a company like SAS. So, Tim, I want to thank you for being here today. I don't know if we discuss and cover all the topics you wanted to talk about, but hopefully a few. And so, any closing remarks?
Yeah, so I would just say that I would encourage the folks that are watching this to go inspire a high school student, a college student, a kindergartner, get them in STEM. I like to ask people this question all the time. How old is the person who's going to invent the thing that revolutionizes storage? How old are they? Are they 75? That's really good. Are they 35? Are they 5? And their answer to my question tells me how optimistic they are. But I would just like to see the best and brightest, the most curious minds. It doesn't matter how old they are, applied to this opportunity.
Here, here.
And bring curiosity. Bring your curiosity.
And don't forget the importance of a better idea. It doesn't always require a new invention. Sometimes a redirection of what you already have. Yeah. A better idea will do marvels.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. John, any final thoughts? And you want to close us with your guitar?
Well, I think the final thought is to move forward, as Tim said, with great ideas and great technology. And let's see if we can solve these coming, and we will, the issues as how our life will be changed with EVs and storage going forward.
Absolutely. Here, here. Let's, we are over time. Let's go, Johnny.
All the girls I've loved before, who traveled in and out my door, so glad they came along. I dedicate this song to all the girls I've loved before, and to all the girls who cared for me, who filled my life with ecstasy. They live within my heart. They will always be a part of all the girls I've loved before.
Thank you, John. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening today. Okay, this is the closing of Digital Roundtable for February 3rd. And thank you, Tim Fairchild, for being with us. And Llewelyn and John Butler, thank you very much, gentlemen. And wish you well until next week.
Okay. Take care.